Hi, good noon to all. We are honored to have here Dr. Sreekumar sir, who is expert in diabetics research and dedicated his work and improve diabetics care and treatment. Sir, we welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Subha.
And we are very much grateful that you have taken the time to come here and share your knowledge and experience with us today, sir.
Welcome, Subha.
Sir, actually, we want to know what is a diabetic. Diabetic is simply a glucose problem or an insulin problem.
Diabetics research is shifting from glucose-centric thinking to understanding the metabolic dysfunction at cellular and mitochondrial level.
Okay.
So if you look at the global diabetic burden, about 530 million adults worldwide live with diabetes.
Okay.
Just in India alone has 100 million diabetics patients. That is the highest in any country.
Okay.
So the early metabolic dysfunctions, if you look at that, research now show insulin resistance begins 10, 15 years before diagnosis, driven by mitochondrial inefficiency, chronic inflammation, and fat deposition, etc.
Okay, sir.
So the precision medicine we are, working on basically revolves bringing the genomics, proteomics, and metabolomics, which are enabling individualized risk prediction for diabetes, and also tailoring the individualized therapy for each of these patients. That is the goal.
Okay.
Basically, the beta cell prevention and the metabolic flexibility are also key in understanding the molecular level of diabetes and tailoring the treatment to suit the individual patients.
Okay, sir. Sir, actually, I want to know why India is the global epicenter for this diabetes, sir.
In Indians develop diabetics earlier at lower body mass index and with more complications because of unique genetic, metabolic, and lifestyle factors.
Okay.
So as I mentioned, we have about 100 million plus diabetics patients in India.
Okay.
Even though the Indian population, the lean phenotypes, that means the Indians develop insulin resistance and diabetes at lower obesity threshold than the Western population. So that includes the genetic predisposition, the fat deposit, especially the visceral fat, and higher visceral fat and lower muscle mass even at normal weight. In addition to that, the mitochondrial variants, we know that mitochondria is acquired from our mother. And certain mitochondrial halo groups common in Indians show reduced oxidative phosphorylation efficiency, thereby increasing the insulin risk factors in Indian people. In addition to that, the urbanization impact, the rapid lifestyle shift, reduced physical activity, high carbohydrate diet, and increased stress have doubled the diabetics rate in Indian cities like in Chennai, Delhi, Mumbai, compared to the rural areas. Also, the early onset, as I mentioned earlier, Indians often develop type 2 diabetics a decade earlier than Western population. That is affecting the workforce productivity and the national health cost. About over 50% of the people affected with, diabetics, they are really not aware of that, the fact that they have diabetes. So it is completely undiagnosed.
Okay, sir. Sir, in your conversation, you had given me a point that the high carb diet is also a part of diabetics. Actually, the high carb diet, what the Indians are taking, is not new to them. Their older people, their older generation are taking the same diet what they are taking now. So, how for the diabetic alone increase, sir?
So the high carb diet include the rice and the wheats, we consume. And probably, it is reducing the intake of those rice and wheats and incorporate more vegetables, green vegetables and, fruits and nuts in a moderate level. Probably
Okay.
is a good way to reduce or prevent the diabetic onsets. And in addition to that, the carbohydrate, reducing the sugar intake and the oil consumption,
Okay.
both that actually help in preventing and reducing the diabetics in Indian population.
Okay, sir. Sir, you also tell that it's not a glucose problem, it is a metabolic dysfunction. Can you please tell me, sir, how it's.
Absolutely. That's a very good question. That, as I mentioned, the mitochondria is inherited from our mother. So
Yes.
when the mother's family have more prone to the diabetics, that will be a risk factor for the children to get diabetes. And the mitochondria, if you look at the link, mitochondria are the powerhouse of our cells. Diabetics is fundamentally a disease of impaired mitochondrial energy metabolism. So what I mean by all our biological functions need energy. So
Okay.
ATP is the currency for various biochemical reactions in our body. So reduced ATP production and impaired fatty acid oxidation led to insulin resistance, which is the precursor for becoming diabetics. When mitochondrial fails to handle metabolic load efficiency, toxic lipid intermediates accumulates in our muscles and liver. This directly trigger insulin resistance and create breeding ground for type 2 diabetics.
Sir, actually, I am having a small doubt here, sir.
Yes.
Sir, nowadays, adult below 18, which means they are kids, they are also prone to type 2 diabetics. How it's possible, sir? And
That
why
is
they are prone to type 2 diabetics very easily, sir, in the small at a earlier stage itself?
a good question. As the mitochondria is acquired from our mother, and any predisposition in the genetic part of genetic component in our genes, that will be a great high risk factor for developing type 2 diabetics. Then, our food habit changed drastically in the recent 10, 15, 20 years. We are eating a lot of this high fat, high calorie diets, and obesity is a problem in kids. So those factors actually enhance the risk for type 2 diabetics in children. And that is what we are seeing not only in India, around the globe.
What about the ROS imbalance, sir?
So, for example, the metabolic signature, the branch chain amino acids, acetyl carnitine, and creatinamide are engaging biomarkers for mitochondrial stuff. So really, we can actually measure in real time the mitochondrial metabolic signatures to monitor the risk factors for diabetics, in addition to the glucose and the glycated hemoglobin measurements. So the maternal inheritance and the metabolic signature, both those things, really help us to, monitor the risk factors and who is going to be at higher risk for developing type 2 diabetes in future.
Okay, sir. Sir, what are the things that the public to be aware on seeing diabetics in them?
Let me start with diabetics is preventable in most cases, especially in high-risk population like in India, through targeted lifestyle and metabolic interventions. What I mean by that is that, reduce the intake of carbohydrates, high-fat diet, and incorporate more unsaturated fat, lean protein, and high fiber, food, which are prone to drastically improve glucose tolerance. Then increase muscle mass by walking and doing some aerobic exercises. That will increase the muscle mass. That is the single most effective way to improve insulin sensitivity. Indians may have normal body weight, but dangerously high visceral fat. Weight to hip ratio and weight circumference should be monitored regularly rather than just by body mass index.
Sir, then, how to control the visceral fat, the circumference of waist, sir? Actually, you told that the waist circumference should be under control. If it is growing continuously, how to be controlled, sir?
By reducing the high-fat diet, intake. So incorporate, reduce the intake of, high-fat diet, oily food, and then, exercise. Incorporate, maybe half an hour walk or some other aerobic exercise into the lifestyle. And, it is a very good practice to, incorporate yoga and meditation in your daily routines, because stress and sleep are again contributing factors to impair the mitochondrial function and raise cortisol and worsening the insulin resistance. So simply by reducing the stress and increasing the sleep, quality of sleep, that will improve the insulin resistance in people. Along with that, reducing the high-fat diet intake and adding more exercise, just simply by walking for 30 minutes. All this actually will reduce the risk factors for type 2 insulin resistance and type 2 diabetics. So those are very simple, easy way to control the epidemic of diabetics in Indian population.
Okay, sir. You told me that protein consumption, a small amount of carbohydrates and a rich protein rich food along with the daily movement in a consistent way, regular way. And what about our sleep portion, sir? Sleep or stress portion? How it act on a diabetic patient or else a normal one? The sleep portion and the stress portion.
The sleep is an important factor in our lifestyle, right? When we want to, after working a long day, we want to decompress and, that and the brain and the entire body needs to relax. And that we are actually obtained by having a good sleep. So during that good sleep, we are actually activating our, not only our genetic proteomics, metabolic, components in our lifestyle, but also improving the quality of those factors. So it is a very important step that in our daily life that we have a 8-hour good sleep that will reduce the stress, thereby improving the insulin sensitivity in each of us. That will reduce the risk for becoming type 2, not only type 2 diabetics, various other diseases are shown by proteomics, genomic, and metabolic techniques.
Okay, sir. Sir, as a scientific leader, what can you emphasize from this?
The genomics, proteomics, and the metabolic, along with the mitochondrial biology positions, we can easily explain the diabetics as a symptom level metabolic disorder. So what we can use is the multi-omics integration, combining the genomics, proteomics, and metabolic that reveals the early onset of the diabetics.
Okay.
So in addition, we can insight into the population specific factors, why Indian specific genomic and mitochondrial data are essential for the prevention and control of diabetics. That is really what is important, that doing the translational research in the laboratory, that how lab discoveries can rapidly inform public health strategies. Research is highly focused on novel, target like GLP-1 receptors agonist and cellular therapies aimed at preventing pancreatic beta cell functions. Now we have GLP-1 to reduce the body weight, which is a good starting point for reducing the risk factors for type 2 diabetics. And also we can use that AI-driven risk prediction, continuous metabolic monitoring, and mitochondria targeted therapies for, reducing the risk factors for type 2 diabetics and various other diseases such as cancer, etc. in Indian populations. That is where our central government can actually fund along with the private entities, non-profits in India can actually increase the awareness in the Indian populations and increase the funding for cancer, the translational research, thereby educating the public. In fact, one of the foundations which I worked with in the past, the Mohan Diabetic Center in Chennai, is a good example. He actually is contributing so much into educating and discovering and diagnosing and discovering and treating the type 2 diabetics patients. And I really commend his decades-long contributions into preventing early diagnosis and curing, the diabetics in India.
So, sir, it may be a first question, but I ask you at a loss, how a patient analyze that he is a diabetic? How can he diagnose before going to a doctor? What are the symptoms that a patient is having when he is going for a diabetic? What is a pre-diabetic or when is in diabetic? What are the symptoms that he or she has to face, sir?
You know, good question. Obesity is a risk factor. So that is where I will stand. Then we have to incorporate not only at adults but in the kids in school levels more physical activities, and then reducing the intake of high fat, high carbohydrate diets so that we can from the early childhood reduce the risk factors not only for diabetics but also for various other diseases.
Okay, sir. Sir, and I want to ask you some more question. So, what are the things that will be affected inside our body when we are having a diabetic for more than a years, yeah, yeah, around a decade? What are the things that will be affected inside our body, sir?
So, basically the insulin is produced in the pancreas and then which plays vital role in our metabolic, pathways, metabolomics.
Okay, sir.
So when it is impaired, it affects all our organs. That is why we have type 2 diabetics contributes to the kidney failure, the liver, diseases, the renal diseases, all those things, the retinopathy, renal diseases, the liver diseases, all those things actually is contributed because of the insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. The cost for, controlling this, taking care of this patients with renopathy, nephrology, neuropathy, etc., is going to be a challenge for the India's healthcare systems.
Sir, what about the tablet that they are taking, sir? That their intake for a diabetic plays a role. What role it is going to play in them, sir?
Really, that I cannot emphasize more about the reducing the carb, high carb diets intake and the oily food, the high fat food, the sugar intake and the salt intake. We love to have sweets, any time of the day, but reducing that sweet intake, reducing the sugar, the salt intake, and reducing the high fat diet, carbohydrate, fats, and oil, and increasing the daily activity, exercise activity. Those are the primary, ways we can reduce the risk for, type 2 diabetes.
Okay, sir. Sir, actually, we already know that when a person is prone to diabetic or a BP, they will be easily catch each other. Diabetic, BP, and cholesterol both are all three are sisters together. Usually, the persons will be saying, sir. So, how far these three are related, sir, with each other?
They are related, but if you look at the molecular level, how they are related, is starting with our food consumption and the exercise activity. Let me tell you that the intake of high amount of sugar and salt in our diet, that really contribute into the increased elevated blood pressure. And that elevated blood pressure is actually damaging our vascular system, thereby, impair the normal biology in our body, just like in the pancreas and liver and heart. So it can contribute to the various cardiovascular diseases in addition to the neuropathy and rhinopathies.